of the tax proposals that are contained in this finance bill?
First of all, thank you so much for having me here today. Going to your question, public participation is a constitutional requirement, and the Constitution does not envisage protests as a form of voicing out your opinion. We expected the people, whoever they are, all stakeholders, to send their representatives, not crowds, because a public participation forum is not a political rally. So, and as it did happen yesterday at the Kenyatta International Convention Center, different stakeholders did send their representatives to voice their views and to explain to the committee, the finance committee, their reservations and the reasons why, and explain to them the implications. And at the end of the day, during the closing remarks, the chair of the finance committee, the Honorable Kuria, stated that they should watch out and actually promised that they are going to take into consideration the various views that had been submitted by the stakeholders. So I believe that all is not lost, as many people have been saying, that this is just a public relations stand, but I believe that the committee is taking it seriously, and the president and his government are definitely listening.
Right.
And something is going to be done about it.
And that's of course the concern for Kenyans, because there's been a lot of communication, there's been a lot of public participation, even outside the National Assembly sanctioned public participation. Take a look at the front page of the Standard newspaper. The side there says, reject punitive taxes. Hustlers plead with MPs. And so Kenyans during the public participation process, especially that public forum yesterday, Sosion, asked the Finance Committee to have Parliament amend or wholly discard the proposed bill, which they say is punitive to Kenyans. But the concern is just that, as the National Assembly Finance Committee retreats, how much will the views of Kenyans really matter when the voting takes place Thursday next week?
Yeah, it's not during the voting, but it is a process of the public views. The budget making process, the development of the finance bill, which is actually a law that will provide the revenue collection measures, goes through a thorough process, and that is a provision of the Constitution. The Treasury has proposed the different measures of raising revenue, technically in an independent way. Yeah, and the matter has been tabled before Parliament in the first reading and has gone for public participation. Public participation, as I've always said, is not a referendum. It is an opportunity for the public to submit their opinions. And the opinions are subjected to technical analysis by the Finance Committee of the National Assembly. And therefore, as it retreats to write its report, it will be writing its report cognizant of the views of the public and also cognizant of the proposals of the National Treasury. Because at the end of the day, come 1st of July, the new financial year, the budget must be implemented. The budget that will be read 2 days from now must be implemented, must be financed, and if need be, without any deficit. So the committee then will consider various amendments. It will propose various amendments as it tables its report. And the amendments proposed by the committee will, of course, always take precedence. Normally, it's rarely contested in the House. Right. It is negotiated. And when it goes to the other stage of Committee of the Whole, members of Parliament, individual members of Parliament, who then are the representatives of the people of Kenya, have got a leeway to propose amendments. And so that is why this thing doesn't require too much activism, whereas the right to demonstrate and picket is a provision in the Constitution to express themselves. But then Kenyans should then utilize the members of parliament so that they can make the necessary proposed amendments that will be voted for in the House. But at the end of the day, Parliament insists of the final product of the finance bill, and they will do it cognizant of the budget that will be financed by the finance bill.
Okay, and we'll
so
be getting to the budget. Let's bring in
the finance bill raises revenue to finance the budget.
All right, let's bring in Jackson Ngoima, who is a political analyst. Ngoima, and just as Sosion rightly puts, an interesting picture that there was a lot of public participation. Essentially, that in itself was activism, awareness and sensitization of Kenyans more than ever on this stage of the budget process. And so members of parliament, especially elected members of parliament, are now feeling a bigger burden on their shoulders when it comes to representation, because people at the grassroots are now more aware of what their leader needs to do when it comes to the finance bill. What impact or what direction is that likely to steer this conversation in the finance bill ahead of that anticipated tabling and voting in parliament on Thursday next week?
Thank you very much. The budget-making process is a function of parliament, but the people of Kenya have been given the right by the Constitution to participate in the process and to air their views. And the reason as to why this public participation was put in the Constitution was not a cosmetic application. It was for the people to decide what they want to do with their resources. This budget 2024-2025 financial year budget proposal has been largely rejected by the people. It has very serious punitive provisions. We've already had political rhetoric from politicians, members of parliament, saying that they have been summoned and this budget must be passed without amending even a comma, thereby making the entire public participation process a joke. And this happened also in the budget 2023-2024, where the views of Kenyans were not taken into consideration. Every time this government and parliament is imposing new taxes on Kenyans. So I know the turn that is going to likely take is that there will be a protracted battle that is likely to end up in court. And demonstration, picketing are rights that are guaranteed to us Kenyans in the Constitution. They are not given to us on a silver platter by the politicians. And therefore, we expect to see a lot of back and forth on this bill. And of course, we witnessed that to the 2023-2024 budget cycle. Quite a showdown there looming. Chakara, as we move on from this finance bill issue, what are your expectations on Parliament and even the Finance Committee of the National Assembly when it comes to tabling the report on public participation?
Well, I think tabling the report is it's not so much expectation for me as far as that is concerned, but for me my greatest concern is what they are going to do when they retreat, now that they have retreated. So because that's the crux of the matter, that's where the rubber meets the road. The product of that retreat is what will be tabled. So basically, as I said earlier, Honorable Kuria, Kimani Kuria, who is the chair of the Finance Committee, did promise that they were going to take those views very seriously and that they were going to be reflected in the final outcome of the bill that is going to be tabled on the floor of the House. And I want us to understand that the MPs are also not in a very easy place. Regardless of the lobbying, regardless of the instructions that they have received from their leaders, the members of parliament are also seized of the fact that they are representatives of the people and that the people have made their sentiments very strong. And this time, compared to last year, actually the public's voice has been louder than ever before. So I think that now that the public also understand, the people know that the MPs are the ones who are going to have the final say on this thing. The MPs are also conscious of that, because you know they are politicians. So they have a responsibility here to legislate, while at the same time they have the burden of representation and to be as the voice of the people. So they have to balance that well. And all of them are responsibility that are vested on them that they cannot run away from either of them.
Absolutely, because then the job at the end of the day is to balance the needs of the people and the government's fiscal needs. But I'd like to move on to what else is making headlines on the dailies this morning. And your input here, is greatly appreciated. And so on page 2 of the People Daily, we have a report there. TSC cracks whip on intern teachers over strike action. The story is also on the Daily Nation that says JSS tutors sacked 2 days after calling off their strike. And so the Teacher Service Commission seems to have cracked the whip on junior intern teachers for allegedly participating in an illegal strike. TSC cited in their letters professional misconduct as grounds for termination of services of intern teachers. And this came just 2 days after teachers had called off their month-long strike. And so some of the nearly 60,000 intern teachers had in early May boycotted teaching when schools reopened for the second term on the basis of their employment terms. Sosion, isn't this the government going back on the consensus reached with JSS teachers?
It is not the government. It is not even the consensus. That was uncalled for confusion because of poor communication from the Teacher Service Commission. When the president signed the Education Charter and committed to hires 116,000 teachers, then the responsibility of establishing a policy that is well understood rested with the Teacher Service Commission, so that this kind of activism and pressure should cease to exist, so that then those teachers who are hired on those particular terms can concentrate and deliver teaching, rather than engaging in activism and feeling mistreated. So the problem rests with the Teacher Service Commission. Interdicting them doesn't help. They must take responsibility, because there should have been a policy document on how the intern teachers are being brought on board. A document that is even adopted by Parliament, that for this period, there will be these volunteer teachers who will be expected. In fact, the word intern is wrong. The right terminology would be volunteer teachers who would be volunteering to teach for this period, and they will be given appointment and paid stipend for this much and for this period of time. And at the end of 2 years period, because of constraint of resources in the country, that's a reality, and it happens with many developing economies. Ours is not an exception. Then they will be automatically converted to PNP. The moment that assurance is given in policy document and is communicated, and teachers are talked to continuously, you would not have this kind of confusion.
So what
when
does
you
it
don't
mean
communicate,
then for the fate of those who have gotten those sacking letters?
From where I sit, I'll see them moving to the Employment and Labor Relations Court, and those letters will be quashed. As far as I know, it's unnecessary conflict. The president has developed a very good roadmap, and employing 56,000 teachers within 2 years is no mean achievement. Planning to convert 46,000 of them using 10 billion, which has already been communicated and which was in the plan, is another pretty good step. Putting in more money to onboard another 20,000 is the next phase. And then the next financial year, another 20,000 until the gap is bridged. So to me, the plan is so good. If well communicated, I don't think a sensible teacher or a sensible social group of teachers, like this one is now a social group of teachers teaching JS with similar challenges, similar conditions, and the employer has not communicated effectively. So to me, the buck stops at the door of the employer.
All right.
Does TSC understand the Kenya Kwanza manifesto, and is it ready to communicate it effectively to the teachers, to the satisfaction of teachers, so that we don't have this kind of confusion.
Okay.
My wish is that these teachers can be communicated to effectively, and they can concentrate in implementing the new curriculum. Remember, the new curriculum, which is dogged with a lot of challenges, that one, we don't need to lie, it's the truth, and it was wrongly conceived, poorly implemented, it still has challenges. We cannot be having teachers who are implementing a new curriculum at a critical phase called junior school, still having issues and not understanding their benefits and what the government has planned for them. It's because they don't understand. Nobody has communicated to them effectively. And therefore, TSC should have communicated with clarity, very clearly. TSC is a constitutional commission with officers that goes up to the counties and properly funded. What are they doing?
Let's bring in Goima. There's been a lot of concerns over the communication by the Teachers Service Commission, and I think we can say it may be one of the most independent institutions, because every time something goes wrong in the education sector when it comes to teachers, every other government stakeholder will point fingers to the teacher at the Teachers Service Commission. But there seems to have been very clear communication going when it comes to this issue. The Teachers Service Commission had actually written a show cause letter to about over 7,000 JSS teachers, asking them to show cause why they didn't come to work, failure to which, their, time there would be terminated. And so it looks like those who got these sacking letters are those who did not respond to this show cause letter. But this comes at a time when, ahead of the budget reading, the budget policy statement and estimates there show that Parliament has actually allocated more funding to the Ministry of Education from the budget that's estimated. And so what do you make of the implementation when we have issues as little as communication literally crippling entire school operations?
I think it's quite unfortunate. The action taken by TSC is quite unfortunate because when JSS intern teachers raised questions, they were legitimate questions that they were raising. Kenyans do not understand all these niceties that the governments and employers keep on engaging in. For example, if you look at TSC, it is not even an issue of communication. It has become a standard tool that whenever people take industrial action, the first response to every employer is to write a show cause letter. It has become a standard practice. Same thing with when the doctors went on strike, when the nurses are on strike, even in corporates. Whenever unionizable staff go on strike, the first action of the employer is to draft a show cause letter. In actual sense, to agree with what Honorable Sosiona said, this matter ought to be handled very carefully. They must understand that not only the teachers, parents, students, nobody really understands this JSS thing. Nobody understands this new curriculum. Nobody understands anything about the new system of education. In fact, even parents who have children in class 8 don't even know, is it grade 8? They don't even know where their kids are headed in grade 9. They don't even understand exactly what happens after grade 9. So the whole of this thing is something that I should believe the government is working on. They should improve their communication, especially as far as education is concerned. There should be better coordination between TSC and the Ministry of Education, because when things go wayward, we always blame TSC, but the main player is government, in this case, the Ministry of Education, and therefore there should be better coordination between TSC, the government, and the teachers themselves. And also, the NAT should also be able to engage TSC in a better way. Even as we accuse TSC of not being able to communicate properly, I think there's a very big problem in the manner in which the Ministry of Education and the entire education system is running.
And Reverend Chakara, we've had members of Parliament now literally asking the Ministry of Education to clean up its house, because there's been more funding allocated to the ministry, but we have funding issues in implementing the JSS program. We have funding issues in, building classrooms. Look at page you know, at the top page of the Standard, a report there that secondary schools stand to lose 20 billion shillings thanks to CBC. Now, of course, this is a transition period, but there will be no Form 1 from next year as the CBC process takes shape. So we'll only have Form 2, Form 3, Form 4 as secondary schools now prepare to host CBC grade 10. But there's been a lot of questions and concerns about the transition. Some schools say they'll actually lose funding when it comes to this transition. What are your thoughts as a governance expert on the governance of the education sector by the Ministry of Education?
Well, I think the whole education sector and the whole ecosystem, as it were, has many stakeholders and many players. And Teacher Service Commission is not part of the Ministry of Education. It's not an arm of the Ministry of Education. It's an independent constitution that is mandated to take care of all issues teachers. So they are the employers of the teachers. So if there's anything to do with the employment of teachers, you don't blame the Ministry of Education. The other day, the Principal Secretary in charge of basic education, Dr. Belio Kipsang, said that they actually assured JSS teachers that all of them who have already served for over 2 years, their terms are going to be changed to permanent and pensionable. So it's already assured. And he said that it's already, the funding has already been allocated in this current financial year. So it then is the responsibility of the employer, the Teacher Service Commission, to communicate convincingly to their employees, that is the teachers, how this is going to happen and the roadmap for implementation, and assure them, because when you see teachers protesting and all that, it means that there is no clarity. So there's ambiguity in the manner in which the Teacher Service Commission is communicating with its employees.
All right.
But the ministry generally is handling, they have so much on their plate. And I think whether it is the issue of ill preparedness or the short time that the implementation of this CBC is required to take place. It's not easy to implement a new curriculum.
All right, let's take a break.
And change a system. It comes with its own, I think they are called transition crisis. So they're teething issues. And I believe that in the process of time, there's going to be clarity. All
right, we must take a break, gentlemen. We'll come back with a bit more on this conversation. That's us making headlines on the dailies this morning. Let's wind up on page 10 of the People Daily, that cartoon, very quickly before we move on. It will be part of the conversation coming up after the break. But, you know, which way are they looking? Which side, which script are they speaking from? Do let us know your thoughts on this picture. The hashtag is New Dawn. Do stay with us.